This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by Sky Sports Boxing's Adam Smith over Zoom. Adam, first and foremost, how are you doing?
Hi, Andy. Yeah, we're all okay. We're all healthy in our household. Three children of different personalities doing different work. You know, schoolwork is homeschooling, so it's been a learning process for everybody. I think we've all tried to be nice as you can be in lockdown, and try and support the NHS and try and learn a few new skills. I've been cooking a lot, baking, which maybe Dillian inspired me from his performance in MasterChef. But I've been doing a bit of that, and yeah, work is different. Sort of majority really working from home, and obviously, it's been about filling 11 sports channels with what we can for a long time while live sport hasn't been around. With obviously debate shows with. Reminiscing the great nights. We're doing quite a lot of sort of looking back down memory lane and writing, and now it's planning the return of boxing, which is almost upon us. Tonight is Top Rank's first sort of big show back with Shakur Stevenson at the conference centre at the MGM, and that'd be very interesting to see how that goes behind closed doors. I know they've had a lot of teething problems and a lot of financial issues. Of course, I've kept very well linked up with Bob Arum, with Todd DeBerth. Obviously, Eddie and I talk every day. I spoke to Frank Warren last week, and trying to Shelley Finkel and trying to sort of talk to all the sort of movers and shakers in the sport and see sort of how everyone's going to come back, because it's going to be a new norm, as everyone keeps saying. It's going to need patience with obviously no crowds for a while, but I think the most important thing is to get boxing back up and running, get sport back up and running. I'm so excited about the Premier League coming back next week. So excited that Liverpool will finally win the league, and I think everyone needs football back, and then cricket and Formula One, and then boxing, and everything sort of starts to roll again. But for boxing, as I've said, Andy, before, it's about a bit of patience. But I think the cards that I've seen, that Eddie's going to come back with a very, very strong. I'm sure Frank will come back with strong stuff himself, and we'll get back into it. But the most important thing is the health and safety of the fighters, of the staff, the people working around the shows, and everything will be put in place to make sure that is as best as it can be. We still adhere to the government advice, to the Great Boxing Board, and it's a slow process, but we'll get back. And I think the good thing, Andy, was that we're at a great period before lockdown. So I have no doubt that the fighters who've kept themselves mentally and physically strong during this period of inactivity will get back, and will be absolutely chomping at the bit to fight again. So I think as the months stick by, we'll get better fights than probably we've had in a long time.
It's obviously only been a matter of a couple of weeks since we last spoke, but since then, what's the latest with regards to Fight Camp? What kind of updates can you give us?
Well, I'm going to go to the Matchroom Garden at social distance tomorrow to have a real catch up with them. And I mean, there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of things that have been talked about. It's a huge project. It's a massive undertaking in Eddie's garden. It's novel, it's innovative, it's a sort of crazy idea really, but it's fantastic. And there's obviously a lot of broadcasting and production conversations that are had between various people, and we're working in conjunction with Matchroom to make sure that we adhere to all the guidelines. We come back safely. There's the Sky guidelines, there's the Matchroom guidelines, there's the board guidelines. There's a lot of things that needs to be addressed, and obviously the testing and and the fighters. So we've got to make sure the fighters have got back into enough sparring in time and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of work. It's a day by day process, and things change. Things are changing sort of week by week, really, with lockdown and the ease, and when businesses are coming back, and and whether there may be a second spike down the line. So there's all that sort of stuff, and we've just got to take it slowly and take it carefully, and make sure that we tick the boxes, and safety is the most important thing for everybody. But obviously we want to bring boxing back. We want to bring all sport back for fans. And we know that, television is a huge medium for that, broadcasting. And, when the crowds can't happen yet, and fans are frustrated. That we're all frustrated. We love having huge crowds and the Sweet Caroline and the big arenas, and they're a way off. So I think we've got to take it step by step and come back slowly. And there's only 5 fights allowed on each card, and we've got to adhere to the guidelines, and that means commentators at ringside, fighters in the ring, how many people you're going to have, in a location, broadcasters, promoters. It's going to be very different and very difficult at times, but I think that it'll be great just to have sport back, and I think that's the most important thing at the moment now. Cheer up the nation a bit, because it's been difficult, and it's been very difficult with the other issues that are going on globally at the moment. Black Lives Matter, very powerful, very relevant, very important, and with COVID, it really is an unprecedented time in the world, and we've got to be doing everything we can, which is doing everything right, and and as far as bringing sport back, we'll try and get that bang on. But it's a challenge for us, and it's a challenge everybody at Sky cannot wait to embrace.
With shows returning, obviously you mentioned earlier on, Top Rank's going to have their first show back today with Shakur Stevenson. How much are you going to be looking into what was and wasn't successfully run as a part of a show from a production point that we could anticipate seeing kind of put in place with regards to the UK shows? Granted, UK shows will be outdoors in Matchroom, back garden in Matchroom's case, and tonight's show in Vegas is indoors. But aside from that, how key is it that we're able to see what is and isn't done successfully over there to try to implement the successful stuff over here?
Sure, we watch the UFC as well, and we'll watch, very carefully what Top Rank are doing over the coming weeks. The key for us is that we're not coming back until July, and probably, late July, and that's possibly when Fight Camp will start. So, we've got a few weeks, we've got a bit of time, and and it's not just the boxing shows abroad that we'll be looking at. We'll be looking at the football coming back next week, and then Formula One, cricket, obviously horse racing is back already. Matchroom have got snooker going again, darts. There's other sports as well that we'll look at, and it's an education for everybody. Nobody's been in anything like this before. It's unprecedented, uncharted territory, and the most important thing is that sport's coming back. So of course we'll look carefully, and we'll talk to our counterparts what works and what maybe hasn't worked and what's difficult, and hopefully as the weeks go on, you live and learn every day, don't you, Andy? And I think that's the most important thing, that we take other people's learnings and difficulties, and we bring them in, and then we'll make the odd mistake, I'm sure, and then we'll get better at it. But I think the important thing as well is that the outdoors is not going to be beyond summer. We're going to have Fight Camp for a month, and we've got the good old British weather is going to scupper things as we go into September, October. So we're going to have to go indoors, whether that's studio space, whether that's a hotel, whether that's a small venue, what it's going to be. And when will crowds begin to come back? They're talking about the pubs opening maybe a little bit earlier now than they were going to, with the outside spaces. And is it a case of that we'll get small crowds back, a bit earlier than anticipated? And I think sort of, a month ago, Eddie and I were saying, well, we're not going to see crowds, are we, in 2020? We're going to have to wait till 2021, and maybe we'll have to go abroad. But I don't know, things could change, and it could be quicker. We could get maybe 100 people or 500 people or 1,000 people. I don't know. And maybe if, AJ and Purewal, they don't fight until, say, I don't know, October, November, will we get a bit more there? I don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, do we? We have to adhere to the government. We have to adhere to the British board. And it's about being patient. It's about taking time. It's about getting things right, as right as we can. And the most important thing, again, is getting boxing back safely and at the right time. If they're going early in America, let's have a look. We wish them well. It's great to see boxing back, but they're going quickly with it. And I think the board have sort of marked, and we don't want to go back till July. And I think Robert's taking everything very carefully, very slowly. And of course it's a dangerous sport. We need paramedics, we need medical staff there, and as the NHS just gets a little bit calmer, and hopefully it's, a lot of people are going to work so many hours, aren't they? They're going to be some very tired people on that front line, and we've got to make sure that, this is a sport. This is not this is not being out there and dealing with COVID on the front line. This is a sport, and we've got to remember that. But I think it feels like it's the right time to come back. sort of mid to end of July, and I think that we'll come back with as big a statement as we can, but as carefully as we can too.
Moving away from shows returning, and obviously you mentioned AJ earlier on, and in these current uncertain times, I'm going to ask you, we've recently saw a speech from Anthony Joshua during a Black Lives Matter protest in Watford this past weekend. That's been doing the rounds. It's caused a strong reaction online. Some people calling AJ racist from what they've seen. First and foremost, what was your thoughts on the speech?
I mean, firstly, I'm very passionate about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I was really pleased to see my kids, do the Blackout Tuesday last week, and unprompted, I didn't even discuss it with them. They just went and did it because we live in a multicultural world, and racism in any way, shape, or form is wrong, utterly wrong. I have many friends of different races, creeds, colours, ethnic backgrounds. Myself, I'm from Russian Jewish stock, Irish Catholic stock. I've got friends of Italian Afghan. I've got black friends. I've got white friends. To me, it's irrelevant. Every life matters, but Black Lives matter incredibly, and it's something which the horrific scenes with George Floyd, the horrific scenes over in Minneapolis, and it's started a huge outpour, and I think absolutely rightfully so, and there has to be change. So, to see Anthony Joshua, protesting and at a sort of, calm protest, a rally that wasn't, we've seen some very difficult scenes as well, and obviously we want a peaceful rally, and I agree. I think the protest should happen, and I think they should be peaceful. And we saw Anthony in Watford, and I'm pleased he went out and spoke his mind. This is what he wanted to do. I understand that he was reading from a script, so if he's handed a script and maybe he hadn't looked at it before, then slightly naive on his point. But he was caught in the moment, and I think that he's a big image, isn't he? He's a big image for sport. He's a big image for black youths, for every youth. Everyone that looks up to him. My kids look up to AJ, and I know that there must be huge amounts of people, around the country, and I think that he's there, and we know why he's there. He's there to say that racism in any form is totally out of order, and should it should not have a place in society. And I think that's what he was there for. He was there to speak up for Black Lives Matters, absolutely. And look, he's if you see the whole video, you hear him, and we know him. Okay, yeah, he's not what he's being depicted to be out there. But I think if you take a little chunk of something, and what he was saying about businesses, etc., and you take that and it plays around, you can understand people's reaction in some way. Everyone's going to have something to say about this, and it's very difficult with social media as it is now. You're almost sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. We know what he was trying to say. He was obviously asked to read something before. It's not about the shots. He was boycotting racism in every form. Watch the whole video. And I do know something else. I do know that he's in conversations with the MP of Watford, the Mayor of London. I know he's in conversations with the head of the council, I think, in Watford as well. And he wants to put 7 figures of his personal money into a community centre there. And it's not just a community centre for blacks, it's a community centre for all races. It's a community centre to educate on all races, black, white, Jewish, it doesn't matter, Asian. Look, Andi, you and I have talked offline about this, about things that you've been through, about things that I know friends of mine have been through. And I'm very close, as to Johnny, and Johnny feels very passionately about this and about what Sky can do as well, and how we can move forward and get more diverse. It's absolutely right to be talking out. It's absolutely right. I feel passionately about it. I feel very proud of our scholar Imani Lancicott for what she's come out and said, and it's something that's really close to my heart. And it's something that, in boxing, we've talked about it. It's like, it's so diverse, it's so multicultural, it's so great, isn't it? That you don't ever, color of the skin just doesn't, it's about who the people are. Every life matters, and it's really, really important. So yeah, Anthony was making a statement, and I think he's absolutely right and justified to speak. I think a lot of what he said is so right, and I think maybe reading from the script he was naive, maybe he said a wrong thing, maybe that's been picked up, but actually we know AJ, and I know him, and I know that he wants to do right for all colours, all creeds, and I think that that's the important thing, that racism is wrong, and that's the message.
We know after that speech kind of went viral, AJ's put a different statement out on Twitter, kind of saying that his own thoughts on everybody's reaction to it all. Again, what was your thoughts on his follow-up statement?
Look again. I mean, he feels very passionately about an area, right? Very passionately, always has. And I've done many interviews with him in many different surroundings, and the message that I always get from Anthony is that it's about people, it's about education, it's about it doesn't sort of matter where you've come from. You've got the opportunities. It's about supporting each other. He came over to my house 3 summers ago, maybe, and I hadn't gone on the record about that. It's something that it was a family thing, and he came over and he spent time with my kids, and it was a very ad hoc thing, and we spent a day together, and my kids came back from school, and he was helping them with homework and all that sort of stuff. And I wrote about that, recently, because I wanted to make a point about the sort of person he was. And I think, look, whether they're white kids or whether, my kids have completely diverse friends, and it's brilliant to see. I love the fact they embrace cultures, they embrace foods, they embrace backgrounds, they embrace all of that. And the opinion that I get about Anthony Joshua is very much that he is a role model. He is an important figure in sport, in life. He is a wonderful ambassador. And I think that it's important for everybody that he touches. Black Lives Matter. It's a massive movement that is going on right now. But Asian lives matter, white lives matter, every life matters. It's very important. And I think that's what Anthony believes in. And I think that maybe he's, there's emotions running high. There's a lot of passion, and maybe, there's upset to what he's seen online. He's trying to give his view, and people are going to take it in different ways. But, it's, as I said, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. What is the right way to say something? I think, is less more. My opinion is that racism is wrong, full stop, in any shape or form, and in any part of the world or life. And that is the message, really, that it's important. And I think Anthony is a very important ambassador in all of this, for the Black culture, for every culture. And I think that we'll see if he does, build this community center and continues to do great work towards getting, everybody together, whatever color, whatever creed, whatever race, together. That will be a real statement. And, people's words can get misconstrued. People can say sometimes the wrong thing, obviously, and maybe regret it and maybe be a bit naive or whatever. That's forgivable, isn't it? That's understandable, when you've got to see between that and you've got to feel what they're really saying. And I think what he's really saying is that racism is wrong. And I 100% agree. And I know you do too, Andy.
100%, Adam. Final thing on it all is, have you spoken to AJ personally since? If so, do you know what his kind of thoughts are about kind of the reaction he's received and he'd have seen over social media?
Yeah, I have sent him some messages, but and I've spoken to his team as well. And look, it's on the sporting front. He turns up with a knee brace on crutches, and people, in sport, are sort of should be talking about that. Really, he's had a little twinge, and that's fine. He'll be okay from that. It's not a big thing. But of course, because of the what's happening out there and the horrendous scenes in Minneapolis and what's gone on since, it's a very different focus. So, I think the key is that he needs to get back into full fitness, into boxing as well, and he needs to do what is right for what he believes in his community in Watford and what he stands for. And as I said, I have every respect for Anthony Joshua. He's been an ambassador for Sky, an incredible one. You just have to ask the young athletes that we mentor, the Amani Lancecotts, the Andrew Potseys, the Daniel Altmaiers, the Emily Appletons, the real diverse mixture of young, white, black, men, women. It's a complete, cross section, and they all look up to Anthony Joshua as a wonderful ambassador and role model. And you know what? It's flipped to someone like Tyson Fury, who I interviewed the other day. I have so much respect for Tyson, for where he's come from, and he's a massive role model as well. And he's gone from sort of there to right down. He's built himself back up, and he said stuff in the past that he's probably regrets, or that people picked up on and say, "How dare you say this and that and the other?" And look where he's come back, and he's now this. They're both role models. They're both going to fight. I promise you, Andy, it's going to happen. They're going to fight each other. It's going to be a great, happening, maybe 2 fights next year. And I think it'll be fantastic that, there are ups and downs. There's ups and downs in sport and ups and downs in life. And it's all an education and it's all a learning process. But, they're role models, and the kids look up to them. And Katie Taylor's and another one, what a great, leading light she's been of not just women's boxing, women's sport, but Irish sport, but a life of what you can do. And we shouldn't be talking about it. We should be obviously reacting to what's happening in America and doing everything we can to sort of help the change. But it's almost like we should be looking up to these sporting idols and seeing what they represent, and getting the young of today, the kids, everyone's kids, buoyed by whatever you are, whatever color, whatever background, you can achieve it. Lives matter, and that's really important to all of us. And I hope that's the message now, that we can move forwards with all of this.
You mentioned AJ's knee brace, just to move away from all of that. You mentioned AJ's knee brace earlier on there. What's your knowledge of kind of the injury that he sustained? Some people will see him in the knee brace thinking it is a bit more severe than what it may well be, but what's your knowledge of it?
I hear it's not serious at all. I hear it as something that he's just got to take the weight off it. It's it's a 2 to 4 week thing. It's nothing more. I think he'll be back in training fairly soon. It's the summer months tick on, and he needs to be, if we're going to get a fight at the sort of autumn time, maybe early winter part of the year. You've got to remember as well, though, that if we do Anthony Joshua and Kubrat Pulev, we want to do it in the UK, and we'd like to do it, obviously, if there's possibility of a crowd. So a slight delay probably isn't the end of the world for everybody, really, because it'd be great to get some fans there in the UK. I don't know how many would be there by that time. We know that sort of Wilder Fury will have to fight. We know that the whole Joshua Fury Joshua talks are ongoing, but we know that it's looking now likely that you'll have maybe 1 or 2 fights in 2021. So I think we've got to concentrate on getting almost like the semi-finals back. Deontay Wilder will want to regain his crown. He's got enormous power. He's got huge pride, and he'll want to right what he believes is wrong of what happened in Vegas. And Tyson Fury will start a big favourite to repeat it. So that's got to take place. There's all the talk of, will that happen in America or Macau or Australia on Christmas Day, Boxing Day? I've heard all of this, and it's fantastic. And it will happen where it happens, and there's a lot of work towards that. But I've no doubt that Joshua Pulev and Wilder Fury will happen this side of Christmas, and then we get the winners hopefully in the new year, but in the springtime maybe. But you try telling that to Kubrat Pulev and Deontay Wilder, they want to win titles, and so I think it will all work. I think Joshua will be back. I think it's nothing to worry about. I think that maybe he just needs time to let it heal properly. Look, there's doctors, physios, conditioners. He's got a huge team. They'll be telling him exactly what. But from what I hear, it's not severe.
There are a couple of heavyweight fights I do want to get your thoughts on, Adam. You just mentioned Wilder Fury 3 there. I saw the article you guys put out as well on Australia being a possible host of that fight. Uh, would happen on Christmas Day, our time. I think it's Boxing Day in Australia. The promoter, Dean Lonergan from Australia, has been speaking to Bob Arum. What's your thoughts on it possibly happening on Christmas Day?
Wow, amazing! Look, I was at the second fight. I wasn't at the first fight, unfortunately, although I thought Fury won that. I was at the second fight, which I thought was incredible. And yeah, wouldn't it be amazing to go to Australia or somewhere completely different with it? I think that would be fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I know that Manny Pacquiao's been Bob Arum's taken it over. There's obviously a huge, Costas Hugh we're talking about this week, and the Thunder from Down Under, 15 years since the Hatton fight in Manchester. And yeah, I mean, that's a great thing. The Aussies love their sport. If they get crowds back a bit earlier, maybe that's a fantastic idea. I've heard Macau. I've heard obviously possibly Vegas. If they get, that's maybe why they're coming back so early. Just sort of showing the commission that they can get boxing back, and then let's see if they can get. Obviously, they don't need as many people in Vegas at the MGM. Maybe I don't know, 15, 16,000 because of the ticket prices. They need that gate, but they don't need as many as say in the UK. We're looking at the big stadiums sometimes for the outdoor shows. So maybe there is a chance of it happening in this side of Christmas in America. But there's it's great to look at other alternatives, and obviously it will happen where financially it makes sense. But yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea, and how amazing that would be, wouldn't it, being Australia in the summer?
Another thought I wanted to get your thoughts on, there's been kind of a lot of build-up around it, a potential cross-sport clash between Dillian Whyte and Francis Ngannou. What's been your thoughts on that entire kind of back and forth, Adam?
I've got a huge soft spot for Dillian Whyte. He never seems to have the rub of the green, does he, with the governing bodies and the chance to fight for a world title. And it seems to be going on and on and on. So look, I talk to Dillian a lot, and he just wants to. He wants to fight. He wants to get on. He wants to obviously make money, and and would he love to become a world champion? Probably, but ultimately, I think he wants to be remembered for being in great fights and being in different things. And he goes a bit sort of off piste at times, doesn't he? Let's do MasterChef. Who'd have thought Dillian, and suddenly he does really well at that. He's inspired me to tell you what. He's inspired me in the kitchen. I'm baking every weekend, Andy. I tell you what, I've got to stop at some point. It's just getting ridiculous. There's too much sugar in our house. But yeah, it's he's great, isn't he, Dillian? He always does something different. What I love about the fact that now he's in real, he's trained all the way through lockdown out in Portugal. I think it's been brilliant. He's in great shape. He can't wait for the Povetkin fight. And I think let's get that done. And I think, look, we've seen the appeal of Mayweather McGregor. We've seen other ideas sort of thrown at us. And, I quite like that, the idea of Dillian sort of, crossing over, how would it be? What would the rules be? Where are we going? Are we going into a cage? Are we going into a boxing ring? We saw what Mayweather and McGregor did, and the numbers there. And people said it was a circus show, but they all tuned in. For me, it was theatre. It was great. It was great entertainment. Conor was a fantastic, the media build-up, and Mayweather won as we sort of all expected. But it was great fun, and no reason why we can't do something like that again. Look, YouTube boxing has changed. Who'd have thought we'd have done KSI and Logan Paul, and we did that on Sky, and it was amazing being around the YouTubers. We all learned something different, and different way to broadcast, and different audience. You've got to be adaptable. We're not saying it's for the purists. We're not saying it's for everybody, but there's plenty of that as well. There's plenty of good hard trade fights. We're going to come back with a lot of those in Fight Camp. I know that. So yeah, you've got to sometimes think outside the box, and Eddie's very good at it. Look at the Matchroom Garden, fantastic. What a setting with the city in the background. It's going to look incredible. But maybe it's a case of being innovative in these times, and going through everything that can get boxing and get mixed martial arts, get UFC, everything, all those sort of things back with eyeballs watching. But for us, it's about boxing. I want Dillian and fighting Povetkin. I want Derek fighting Usyk. I want AJ fighting Pulev and then Fury. You do want that to happen, of course. But if the odd YouTube fight or the odd, cross combat sport fight happens, then if it works, it works. It's great.
Do you think it is likely we will see Dillian either make a crossover into the UFC world, or we'll see Francis move over into the boxing world?
I wouldn't count it out. I really wouldn't. It's got momentum, and when things have got momentum, they tend to move fairly quickly. I want to see Dillian Whyte back in a boxing ring. He wasn't great out in Saudi Arabia. He was heavy. He'd had a tough year. We know that, but he had a great win over Oscar Rivas. I want to see him back in with a real tough, hard campaigner, someone who's a real power merchant and has got all that experience in Alexander Povetkin. It's a very good fight, and that's what I want to see. I want to see Dillian back in that, and then let's see where we go. But let's not count anything out with Dillian Whyte.
Well,
I mean, look, I'd love to see the third Joshua fight. You know, the fight in the amateurs, the great fight at the O2. You know, let's not count that out as well. But you know, it's obvious what we want to see as well. That the fight fans want to see AJ Fury AJ, maybe a couple of those. So if those mandatory fights, you know, happen first, which it looks like almost certainly they will now, then that sort of takes 2021 over a bit. And you're thinking, where's Dillian going to go? And if he's not got an avenue, that might be a very appealing one. So let's see. He's going to entertain us, Dillian Whyte, for as long as he's around, and I love him for that.
My final question, Adam, before I do leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. Some rumours and a report from the Financial Times about a couple of weeks ago now saying that DAZN would be looking into potentially a sale of an equity stake or an outright sale of the company because of the difficult times that we're all experiencing at the minute and the effect that the coronavirus has had on the financial world. What's your thoughts on it all?
Didn't Len Blavatnik make a lot of money last week as well? I mean, look, businesses are, you know, I'm in the Sky business, and the Sky business is obviously we have kept Sky very, very important to the nation. You know, what with the news, what with the broadband, what with mobile, what with sort of. You know, we've had a lot of people not on the front line in the hospitals, so to speak, but certainly on the front line, engineers, you know, trying to keep everything going, contact centers, all of that, trying to keep, you know, Sky going when sport has laid a bit dormant. So we're in the Sky business. We're in the business of what we can do to sort of, you know, it's been a crisis time. It's been everybody sort of working from home, everybody collaborating, you know, new meetings, new ways, everything to try and do the best we can for our customers, freezing Sky Sports subscriptions until we feel it's right to come back with big sport. Obviously, the Premier League coming back is a huge point for us. We're going to bring sport back. We're going to, you know, bring everything back. And for our customers and staff, the most important thing is safety and that everyone is healthy. And that's the most important. Every business is going to go through difficulties, okay? I'm sure DAZN are going through difficulties with subscriptions. I'm sure that, you know, they're a sports streaming business. And when there's no sport, it's tough. It's really tough. And, you know, I want to talk to Joe Markowski. Actually, I swapped messages with him a while back, but I haven't for a while, so I want to do that. And, you know, I hear obviously how DAZN are doing. I'm sure that they want to come back strongly from this with, you know, fights in America. Are they going to then launch in the UK like they were planning to, you know, soon? I'm not sure. I'm not privy to what happens in the DAZN world. You know, we've worked with them sort of side by side for a couple of years now. And obviously, if they start in the UK, they become a rival. But, you know, we've got rivals in BT. Frank Warren's talking about collaborating. We did a great interview the other day. I loved it. I love speaking to Frank again. And he was talking about collaborating and doing good for boxing before we sort of get all the knives out and the egos and the BT and Sky. And look, we might end up with BT and Sky working together on, you know, a Fury Joshua fight. We don't know what the future holds. HBO and Showtime have done that. Is there a more collaborative way forward? Eddie will probably say, I want to take over, you know, and Frank saying that I want to do this. But actually, you know, there are ways to collaborate, and there's ways that Sky and DAZN have collaborated. So who knows what's going to happen? Will DAZN, you know, come back stronger? Will they be bought? I don't know. You know, there's no crystal ball here. We've got to just see what happens with businesses. You know, I've got friends who are actors. I've got friends in the catering world. I've got colleagues who are sort of struggling to get back out there, open restaurants up, and sort of, you know, it's very difficult for everybody. You know, businesses is going to be hard, and it's going to hit everyone. So I think there is a way of sort of sticking together. Hopefully people have learned a great deal. They've kept safe through this lockdown. They've learned a great deal about the ways of working in the future, because we're not all rushing back into the Sky offices. It's going to be a very slow process, but there's been a lot of collaboration, a lot of, you know, really effective leadership, I think, and mistakes as well. And I think that, you know, the Black Lives Matter thing is really important. It's very current. It's something that's very important, diverse. At Sky, I think that's something that's really needs, you know, looking at and going forward with, and education. And I think that's very important, as is the way we come back to work. What have we learned from lockdown? You know, what do we need to do? What can be done remotely? What travel will we do? What travel is essential? What, you know, all of these questions, every company is going through that, from Matchroom to DAZN to your company. You know, it's everyone is looking at it, and people have been affected in different ways. You know, some have almost benefited from a sort of pause. Others have really struggled. So it's a case of sort of everybody looking at that, where their own situation is, and doing what they can. But I think, yeah, as collaborative as we can be, certainly in boxing, with the board, listening to the government, listening to advice, taking time, bringing it back slowly and safely is the most important thing. And, you know, and obviously people are struggling. They've been struggling with lockdown. You know, you see the streets now with the protests. We hope they keep them peaceful. Very important what they're protesting about. We need them to keep, you know, try and keep it peaceful as well, Andy. And I think that, you know, that's the most important thing, that everybody in at the moment, we try and sort of, it's almost like hashtag what you're telling your kids: be nice and be together, be communicative, be collaborative, and you know, we'll all come back, and hopefully we come back, you know, stronger after these unprecedented times. And that's all we can do. It's a learning process, Andy, and you and I are learning every day.
Final word to yourself, Adam. What would you like to say to everyone who does tune in to watch our interview today?
I'd like to say that it's there's light at the end of the tunnel, isn't there? That boxing's been an active. There's been obviously it's been really important to adhere to everything. I've spoken to a lot of fighters who cannot wait to get back. So it's a more positive message today. It's a positive message of saying boxing is coming back. It's back tonight in America. It's back, you know, in other parts of the world, and it will be back in Britain in July. And, you know, I'm sure Eddie and Frank and Mick and everybody that's involved, and NTK, their shows will come back, and they'll listen to the guidelines. They'll adhere to everything that's right, and it will come back. And that's a real positive. It will be different. It will probably sound and look different, and it's up to us to try and come up with innovative ways. But the most important thing is that boxing's coming back to your screens, and that's key for fight fans out there. And I've got a little more confidence this week than maybe even last week, that we might see, you know, smaller crowds, you know, sooner than we thought we would. I still think it's months off, but I think that maybe, you know, it's a sort of brighter prospect on that front, Andy. So yeah, it is all about. It's been, you know, very difficult watching the way the world has been in the last few days. You know, I think it's a really important messages that have to get across. I think there's a lot of change that needs to happen, a lot of education. And, you know, I think that there's a new norm that's going to be out there. And maybe, you know, this is all happening at the right time, and that, you know, we will look to a brighter future for the world. But that's what we want, a safer, brighter future, don't we? And hopefully we'll look back at this time, you know, in years to come, and we'll say that was a really important time in the world. A strange, unprecedented, difficult time where a lot of people have lost loved ones. And let's not forget that. That's just, you know, families are really grieving, and we all know people who have been affected by it. And I think that, you know, the key is that those families are, you know, rebuild, and that we are as safe as we can be going forward in what had been uncharted territory in difficult waters. But you know, I think that it's a more positive. You know, I'd certainly, you know, what happened in America is horrendous, and I think that by seeing this reaction, seeing people come together, and yeah, there's always going to be, you know, volatile reaction, but I think that the majority of people are coming together. And, you know, Blackout Tuesday was a big thing a week ago, and I think people really feel strongly about it. And I think there's, you know, people are uniting as well. So I think there's positives to come of it. A long way to go, but positives to come in many ways. So yeah, I hope you and I feel the same sort of way on all of this.
Adam, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you. I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. Like I say, stay safe. I hope you and your family are well, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Cheers, Andy.